The handcuffs bit deeply into her wrist as the local sheriff sneered, tossing her into a concrete holding cell for having a bad attitude. He thought he had just caged another helpless, out-of-town civilian. He was dead wrong. Moments later, a secure classified line from the Pentagon would ring his front desk, and his entire corrupt career would go up in flames. The Georgia heat was unforgiving, rising in shimmering, distorted waves off the black asphalt of Route 119. It was the kind of sweltering afternoon where sensible people stayed indoors with their air conditioning cranked high, but Elena Voss didn't have that luxury. She was exhausted, having just finished a grueling multi-day stint in a windowless sub-basement of the Pentagon, coordinating a highly classified multi-billion-dollar logistical operation for the Department of Defense. Elena was a woman who commanded rooms before she even opened her mouth. She was a major general in the United States Army, a decorated veteran of overseas deployments, and one of the highest-ranking black women in the armed forces. But today she didn't look like a two-star general. She had purposefully left the brass, the medals, and the rigid uniform behind. Dressed in a simple white linen blouse, faded denim jeans, and aviator sunglasses, she was just a woman in a rented navy blue Ford Taurus driving down to see her ailing aunt in Savannah. She was just passing through Oak Haven County, a sleepy, notorious stretch of jurisdiction known among locals as a speed trap. Elena had her cruise control set exactly to the speed limit. Her hands rested at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. She was the picture of lawful driving. But as she crested a small hill, the aggressive glare of red and blue lights exploded in her rearview mirror. Elena let out a slow, measured breath. She signaled right, smoothly pulling the Taurus onto the dusty gravel shoulder. She put the car in park, turned off the engine, rolled down her window, and placed both hands firmly on the steering wheel. She had navigated war zones and faced down hostile foreign dignitaries. A rural traffic stop was not going to rattle her. In her side mirror, she watched the driver's door of the cruiser swing open. Out stepped Deputy Harlan Shaw, a heavily built man, his hand resting casually on the butt of his sidearm. He swaggered toward her car, taking his sweet time, projecting a manufactured sense of authority. "Afternoon," Deputy Shaw said, leaning in slightly, his eyes scanning the interior of her pristine rental car. "Good afternoon, Deputy," Elena replied, her voice steady and perfectly modulated. "Was I speeding?" Shaw chewed on the inside of his cheek. "You crossed the solid yellow line back there, swerving a bit. You've been drinking?" "I have not," Elena answered plainly, "and I have maintained my lane for the entirety of this drive." Before Shaw could respond, a second vehicle, an oversized, matte black Dodge Charger outfitted with aggressive brush guards, screeched onto the shoulder directly behind the cruiser. The door popped open, and Sheriff Silas Crow stepped out. Crow was a local legend for all the wrong reasons. A man with a thick neck, a sun-leathered face, and a silver star pinned to his tactical vest, Crow ran Oak Haven County like it was his own personal kingdom. He had a reputation for aggressive policing, particularly against out-of-towners who didn't look like they belonged in his county. Crow ambled up to the passenger side of Elena's car, tapping heavily on the glass. Elena reached over and lowered the passenger window. "Problem here, Harlan?" Crow asked, his eyes locked onto Elena with a predatory gleam. "Just asking the driver about her swerving, Sheriff," Shaw replied. "License and registration," Crow barked, not bothering with a greeting. Elena kept her movements slow and deliberate. "This is a rental vehicle. The registration is in the glove compartment. I'm reaching for it now." She opened the glove box, retrieved the rental agreement, and then pulled her civilian driver's license from her purse. She handed both across the console to Crow. She did not hand him her military ID. Protocol dictated she travel under a low profile, and she had no intention of throwing her rank around for a minor traffic stop. Crow scrutinized the Virginia driver's license. "Elena Voss, long way from home, Elena. Where you headed?" "Savannah, visiting family." Crow didn't like her tone. It was too calm, too unbothered. Most people he pulled over were sweating, stuttering, terrified of the badge. Elena was looking at him with the mild, evaluating expression of a woman inspecting a poorly formatted spreadsheet. "Step out of the vehicle," Crow commanded. Elena didn't move immediately. "Sheriff, for a simple lane violation, standard procedure is a citation. Is there a lawful reason you are ordering me out of the car?" Crow's jaw tightened. The veins in his thick neck pulsed. "The lawful reason is that I told you to do it. You've got a real attitude problem, lady. Now, step out of the car before I pull you out." Elena knew the law. Pennsylvania versus Mims gave them the right to order her out, even if the premise of the stop was fabricated. Arguing on the side of a highway was a tactical error. She calmly unbuckled her seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out onto the gravel. She stood at her full height, locking eyes with Deputy Shaw, who suddenly looked a little less confident. "Turn around and put your hands on the roof," Crow ordered, walking around the back of the car to stand right behind her. "I am not consenting to a search of my person or my vehicle," Elena stated clearly, ensuring the dashboard camera of the cruiser caught her voice. "I don't need your consent," Crow snapped. "You're resisting a lawful investigation." "I'm standing exactly where you told me to stand. I am completely compliant. I am merely stating my Fourth Amendment rights for the record." That was the breaking point for Silas Crow. A black woman from out of state was quoting the Constitution to him on his highway. His ego, fragile and swollen by years of unchecked rural authority, shattered. He grabbed her wrists, twisting them behind her back with unnecessary force. "You're under arrest." "On what charge?" Elena asked, her voice dropping an octave, cold as ice. "Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest. We'll figure out the rest at the station," Crow hissed, snapping heavy steel handcuffs onto her wrists and tightening them until they pinched her skin. "Let's see how much of that attitude you have after a night in a cage." They shoved her into the back of the sweltering cruiser. As the door slammed shut, Elena Voss sat perfectly straight. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she simply calculated. Sheriff Silas Crow had no idea that he hadn't just arrested a civilian. He had just kidnapped a two-star general of the United States Armed Forces, and the Pentagon does not take kindly to its generals going missing. The ride to the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department was silent, save for the crackle of the police radio and Crow's occasional smug chuckle from the front seat. Elena stared out the window, memorizing the badge numbers, the radio call signs, and the layout of the town. Her mind operated like a supercomputer, logging every civil rights violation, every procedural failure, and every microaggression. The precinct was a depressing cinder block building that smelled strongly of stale coffee, pine sol, and damp concrete. Deputy Shaw hauled her out of the cruiser and marched her through the double glass doors. Behind the front desk sat Margaret, a middle-aged dispatcher with a headset resting over one ear, loudly chewing a piece of pink bubble gum. She barely looked up as Crow and Shaw dragged Elena to the booking counter. "Got a live one today, Sheriff?" Margaret asked, popping her gum. "Oh yeah," Crow sneered, tossing Elena's Virginia driver's license onto the counter. "Miss Elena here thinks she owns the road, thinks she's smarter than county law. Process her, resisting, disorderly, and slap a reckless driving on there too, just for fun." Margaret sighed, hitting a few keys on her outdated computer. "Empty your pockets and take off your jewelry." Elena remained silent. Her hands were still cuffed behind her back. Shaw unceremoniously uncuffed her, grabbed her purse, and dumped its contents onto the metal counter. Lipstick, a wallet, a set of keys, and a heavy black reinforced smartphone. It wasn't an iPhone or an Android. It was a customized DoD-issued encrypted satellite device. Crow picked up the phone, turning it over in his hands. "What kind of burner is this?" "It is my personal property," Elena said, her voice echoing in the small, dingy room. "And I'm invoking my right to a phone call." Crow laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You'll get your call after booking. Put her in cell 4. "Sheriff," Elena said, stepping forward. Deputy Shaw immediately put a hand on his holster, but Elena didn't flinch. "I'm going to make my phone call now. If you deny me this, you are crossing a line you cannot uncross. I strongly suggest you hand me that device." Crow stepped right into her personal space. He loomed over her, trying to use his physical size to intimidate her. "Listen to me very closely. In Oak Haven, I am the law. I am the judge, the jury, and the king. You don't make demands. You speak when spoken to. Now, get in the cell before I add assaulting an officer to your jacket." Elena stared unblinkingly into his eyes. "Understood." She turned and walked herself into cell 4. The heavy iron door slammed shut with a clang, and the deadbolt slid into place. Inside, there was a metal toilet and a concrete bench. Elena sat down on the bench, folded her hands in her lap, and waited. Out in the booking area, Crow was strutting. "Throw her phone in the lockbox, leave her in there to cool off, give her a few hours. She'll be crying for a public defender." Time passed. In the cell, Elena remained entirely motionless. She used the time to meditate, slowing her heart rate, visualizing the operations she had left behind at the command center. She knew that back in Washington, automated systems were already pinging her encrypted phone. As a high-value military asset, her location was passively tracked. If she went completely dark or missed her scheduled check-in window, alarms would silently trigger in a secure room hundreds of miles away. At the front desk, Crow was leaning back in his chair, drinking a Diet Coke and laughing at a joke Shaw had just told. Suddenly, Crow looked toward the holding cell corridor. "All right, bring her the phone. Let's see who she calls. Probably some strip mall lawyer in Atlanta. Put it on speaker so we can hear it." Shaw walked down the hall, unlocked the heavy iron door, and handed Elena the heavy black phone. "Make it quick. You've got a short time." Elena stood up. She didn't dial a 1-800 number. She didn't dial an Atlanta area code. She pressed a sequence of 7 numbers, bypassing standard commercial cell towers entirely, routing directly to a secure military satellite. The line didn't even ring. It clicked instantly. "Watch center, officer of the deck," a crisp, hyper-professional voice answered. "This is Sierra Romeo Actual," Elena said, using her operational call sign. "Authentication code Bravo Niner Tango 7. Shaw frowned, leaning in. "Hey, what is this? Who are you calling?" On the other end of the line, the voice immediately shifted tone, dropping all casualness. "Authentication confirmed. Go ahead, General. We have been trying to reach your transponder. Are you secure?" "Negative," Elena replied calmly, staring directly into Deputy Shaw's confused eyes. "I have been unlawfully detained by the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department in Georgia. I am currently being held in a concrete cell. My transport is compromised." "Copy that, General. Do you require kinetic extraction?" Shaw's face went completely pale. "General, kinetic extraction?" "Negative," Elena said. "Administrative intervention will suffice. Connect me to the Joint Chief's duty officer and patch in Undersecretary Leland Reed." "Stand by, General. Patching now." Shaw backed away from the cell slowly. He turned and practically sprinted down the hallway. Sheriff Crow." Crow stood up, annoyed. "What is it, Harlan? Who's she calling?" Before Shaw could stammer out an answer, the entire dispatch console lit up like a Christmas tree. Not just one line, every single incoming line into the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department began ringing simultaneously. The shrill, piercing sound filled the small precinct. Margaret, the dispatcher, dropped her gum. She stared at the caller ID screens. They didn't show local numbers. They all read the same thing. Restricted U.S. Gov. "Answer it," Crow yelled over the din. With a trembling hand, Margaret picked up the main line. "Oak Haven Sheriff's Department?" A voice on the other end, booming with the weight of the federal government, cut her off instantly. "This is Lieutenant General Marcus Boone, United States Army, calling from the National Military Command Center at the Pentagon. To whom am I speaking?" Margaret swallowed hard. "This is Margaret. I'm the dispatcher." "Margaret, you are currently holding a Major General of the United States Armed Forces in your facility. You have exactly a short time to put the highest-ranking officer in your building on this phone, or I am contacting the governor of Georgia to mobilize the National Guard, and I will have federal agents kicking your doors off the hinges. Do I make myself clear?" Margaret's face drained of all color. She slowly held the receiver out toward Silas Crow. "Sheriff," Margaret whispered, her voice shaking violently, It's the Pentagon for you." Crow's arrogant smirk melted off his face, replaced by a sudden sickening wave of cold dread. He looked at the phone, then looked down the dark hallway toward Cell 4, realizing the catastrophic mistake he had just made. Sheriff Silas Crow had spent years building an impenetrable fortress of local authority in Oak Haven County. He knew the judges, he intimidated the town council, and he operated with the absolute certainty that no one could touch him. But as his heavy, trembling hand took the plastic phone receiver from his pale dispatcher, that fortress began to crumble into dust. He cleared his throat, trying to summon the booming, gravelly voice of authority that usually terrified the locals. "This is Sheriff Crow. Who exactly am I speaking to?" "Sheriff Crow," the voice on the other end responded. It was not loud, but it possessed a terrifying razor-sharp precision that made Crow's stomach drop. "I am Lieutenant General Marcus Boone. You are currently unlawfully detaining Major General Elena Voss, a high-value asset to the United States Department of Defense. I want to be absolutely clear about your current situation. You have breached federal security protocols by seizing her secure communications device, and you have committed a felony civil rights violation under Title 18, Section 242. Crow gripped the edge of the desk. He looked frantically at Deputy Shaw, who was backing away toward the break room, looking like he was ready to bolt. "Now hold on a damn minute, General." Crow stammered, his arrogance desperately trying to mask his rising panic. She was driving recklessly in my jurisdiction. She resisted a lawful— "Do not insult my intelligence, Sheriff," Boone interrupted, his voice dropping to a glacial chill. "We have access to the raw GPS telemetry from her vehicle. We know her speed, her trajectory, and her braking patterns to the exact millimeter. We also have a live audio feed that was triggered the moment your deputy approached her window. You fabricated a traffic stop to harass a civilian, unaware you were targeting a commanding officer in the United States Army." Crow felt a cold sweat break out across his forehead. He couldn't breathe. The air in the dispatch room suddenly felt impossibly thick. "Here's what's going to happen next, Sheriff," Boone continued. "You're going to walk down that hallway. You're going to unlock cell 4. You're going to return General Voss's personal property to her untouched. And then you're going to sit in your chair and wait. I have just gotten off the phone with United States Attorney General Leland Reed. A joint task force from the FBI and the DOJ Civil Rights Division is currently mobilizing from Atlanta. They are on their way. If General Voss is not sitting in your lobby, unhurt and unhindered when they arrive, I will personally see to it that you are charged with kidnapping a federal officer." The line went dead. A dial tone echoed through the silent precinct. Margaret, the dispatcher, was staring at Crow, her eyes wide with sheer terror. "Thomas, what did you do?" she whispered. Crow didn't answer. He dropped the receiver so it dangled by its curly cord. He turned, his boots suddenly feeling like they were made of lead, and walked down the dim concrete corridor toward cell 4. Deputy Shaw trailed cautiously behind him. "Sheriff, what did they say?" "Shut up, Harlan," Crow hissed, his hands shaking as he fumbled a large ring of keys from his belt. He reached the heavy iron door of cell 4. He slid the key into the lock. It turned with a heavy clack, and he pulled the door open. Inside, Major General Elena Voss was sitting exactly where he had left her. Her posture was flawless. She didn't look relieved. She didn't look scared. She looked like a predator calmly watching a trapped rat. "General," Crow choked out, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "There's been a misunderstanding. You're free to go." Elena stood up slowly. She brushed a speck of dust from her white linen blouse. She walked toward the open cell door, but she didn't step through it immediately. She stopped inches from Crow, forcing him to look her in the eye. "It was not a misunderstanding, Sheriff Crow," Elena said, her voice smooth and carrying the lethal weight of an artillery strike. "It was an abuse of power, and your power ends today." She walked past him, stepping out into the main booking area. Crow and Shaw followed her like chastised children. "My property," Elena demanded, holding out her hand. Shaw scrambled to the lockbox, his hands visibly shaking as he unlocked it and handed Elena her purse, her wallet, and her encrypted phone. "Thank you," Elena said coldly. She checked her belongings, ensuring nothing was missing. Then she turned to the dispatch desk. "Margaret, is it?" Margaret nodded frantically. "Yes, ma'am. I mean, General. Yes, General. I need you to lock down your server room immediately," Elena commanded. "No one accesses the dash cam or body cam footage from the recent hours. If a single file is deleted, you will be named as an accessory to the destruction of federal evidence. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes, locking it down right now," Margaret cried, furiously typing on her keyboard. Crow tried to regain a fraction of his dignity. "Now listen here, Voss. I'm letting you go. We can just call this a wash and you can get on down to Savannah. No harm, no foul." Elena turned slowly to face him. A terrifying, knowing smile touched the corners of her lips. "Oh, Sheriff," she said softly, "I'm not leaving. I'm waiting for my escort." The next stretch of time was the longest of Silas Crow's life. Elena did not pace, she did not taunt them. She simply sat in a hard plastic chair in the lobby, casually reading an old magazine as if she were waiting for a dental appointment. Her calm demeanor was utterly agonizing for Crow and Shaw, who were sweating profusely behind the booking counter, frantically whispering to each other. Crow tried to make a few phone calls to the local judge and the mayor, hoping his old boy network could shield him, but word had already leaked. The lines were either busy or his calls were sent straight to voicemail. The rats were already fleeing the sinking ship. Soon after, the quiet afternoon was shattered by the roar of heavy engines. 4 matte black Chevrolet Suburbans, their tires kicking up gravel, swerved aggressively into the precinct parking lot, boxing in Crow's prized Dodge Charger. The doors opened in unison and a dozen men and women in tactical gear and dark windbreakers poured out. The bold yellow letters on their backs read FBI and DOJ. The precinct doors flew open. Leading the charge was Special Agent Quentin Hale, a tall, severe-looking man holding a thick manila folder. Hale immediately locked eyes with Elena. His stern face softened for a fraction of a second, and he offered a crisp, respectful nod. "General Voss, are you injured, ma'am?" Elena stood up, tossing the magazine onto a side table. "I am uninjured, Agent Hale, just slightly delayed." "We'll take it from here, ma'am," Hale said. He turned his attention to the booking counter. The brief warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by absolute, unyielding federal fury. "Silas Crow!" Hale barked, his voice echoing off the cinder block walls. Crow stood up, trying to puff out his chest. "I'm the sheriff of Oak Haven County, and you boys are out of your jurisdiction." "Not anymore, Silas," Hale sneered, slapping the manila folder onto the counter. "I have a federal warrant for your arrest signed by a United States District Judge moments ago. Charges include deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, and tampering with a federal communications device. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Crow hesitated, his hand hovering dangerously close to his duty belt. Instantly, 3 FBI agents drew their sidearms, aiming center mass at Crow. "Hands, now!" one of them shouted. Crow's bravado finally broke. He raised his hands in surrender, turning around slowly. Agent Hale stepped behind the counter, grabbed Crow's wrists, and violently snapped heavy steel cuffs onto them, the exact same way Crow had cuffed Elena just hours prior. "Deputy Harlan Shaw," Hale called out without looking up. Shaw jumped, his voice cracking. "Yes, sir?" "You're named in the warrant, too. Hands on the counter." As the agents moved in to process the now-disgraced lawman, Hale walked over to Margaret, who was hyperventilating. "Ma'am, step away from the console. My cyber team is taking over this network. We are seizing all servers, hard drives, and communications logs." Within minutes, the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department was entirely dismantled. Crow's badge was ripped from his chest, his gun was seized, he was paraded out of his own front doors, head bowed in shame, as a small crowd of curious locals began to gather on the sidewalk, filming the unbelievable scene with their cell phones. Elena watched from the doorway as Crow and Shaw were shoved into the back of a federal SUV. The irony was poetic. Agent Hale walked up beside her. "General, we have a federal escort ready to take you down to Savannah. Your rental car can be towed." Elena shook her head, pulling her aviator sunglasses from her shirt collar and sliding them onto her face. "No need, Agent Hale. I prefer to drive myself. I doubt I'll be running into any more speed traps today." Hall allowed a small smirk. "No, ma'am. I imagine the roads are going to be very, very clear for you." Elena walked out to her navy blue Ford Taurus. She started the engine, the air conditioning roaring to life. She pulled out of the gravel lot, merging flawlessly back onto Route 119. She didn't look back at the flashing lights, the arrested sheriff, or the shattered remnants of Oak Haven's corrupt regime. She just set her cruise control to the limit, kept her hands at 10 and 2, and continued her drive. Can you believe the instant karma that hit Sheriff Crow? He thought he could bully anyone who crossed his county line, but he messed with the absolute wrong woman. If you loved watching this corrupt cop's empire crumble into dust the minute the Pentagon got involved, smash that like button and share this story with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible real-life stories of instant justice. What would you have done in the general's shoes? Let us know in the comments below.